Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, I, a female from a smallish town, bought a nicer ride, and now I always get weird randos approaching me. One rando guy comes up to me in a grocery store, says how much he likes my ride and etc., and all is well. I continue on, but then he stops me a second time to talk about my vehicle. Again, all is good, and I leave with no problem. The next day though, I head back to a different grocery store because I forgot some things. He's pulling up just as I walk in, and then he waves from his truck. I do my shopping, but I notice that he is walking around almost every aisle that me and my kid are in, but he's not looking or picking up anything. We take about 45 minutes with a full cart and then go to pay. The rando guy is suddenly right beside me at the other checkout and then says that he needs to show me something. He says that he took a picture of my ride last night just in case he saw me again. He then shows me, then randomly explains for a lengthy time that he always comes to this grocery store after work to pick up supper. But, after 45 minutes of following us around the store, he's only buying a can of soup. He did have a full cart the day before when we first met. He then tells me that he walked around my ride the other day at the store to get a closer look and then check out the fenders and details, and then he keeps gushing about how nice it is. 3 days later, I go to a completely different grocery store, and much later than the other times, and he's there again, pulling up just as we are leaving. I was only in for 5 minutes. He stops me again, talks about my car, he then walks into the store and I go on my way. But I discreetly watched this guy, and he walked out right after he went in with no purchases at all. A couple of days later, it happens again. It's a smallish town, but I've lived here for 5 years, and I have never seen anyone that many days in a row. His mannerism is not like, "Hey, fancy to meet you here again." It's more like, "Hi, I was waiting for you." It's super creepy, but is it just coincidental and I'm just overthinking it? I'm worried that when he was walking around my ride, he may have put something on my car that tracks it. He made quite an emphasis that he got a closer look to admire it, and each time that I saw him, he oddly explained why he was there, like it wouldn't have been a normal thing to explain to a random person in a store. Also, how can you tell if someone put something on your car? Or am I just crazy? For clarity, I have 3 teenagers at home and I need groceries often, but I only saw Rando buy that one cart, and the 3 other times, he didn't purchase anything, despite being in a grocery store multiple times in 1 week. Also, I live rurally, so I'm not driving there all the time. I only go into town for groceries. I've had several creepy or unsettling encounters from guys before on the bus, but not another woman. And this really took the cake. This story is from a few years ago when I was working at a different job and I lived a few cities over. I took the hour-long bus ride on 2 separate buses every day to work, and yes, this is important to the story. I had gotten on the first bus as per usual, and I was sitting right near the front. More people got on the bus, and one woman in particular sat right next to me, while everyone else pretty much headed to the back of the bus. Now, I didn't mind, even though there were several other empty seats. I just kept reading my book on my phone. She quickly started up a friendly conversation, and I didn't think too much of it while we were conversing because she was just asking my name, how I was doing, and I asked in turn to be polite. She seemed like she had been having a bad week, if not a bad month. She started asking where I was heading and other questions like that. I told her that I was heading to work and that I took the bus every day. She asked a couple other mundane questions, and I asked some as well. It was a pretty nice bus interaction compared to my past experiences. Finally, though, we got to the bus terminal and started transferring buses, only to find out that we were getting on the same one again. She invited me to sit by her again until whoever stop came first. She started up conversation once we were situated in the bus and then asked much more personal questions. Now, I'm a pretty open person and I usually talk and talk forever, so I didn't think much of it. She asked my age, I was 20, and she told me hers was 30. She asked about my family and their names and ages and told me about hers as well. She said a lot of things that depicted a very rough family and a bad situation, and I feel a lot of empathy for her. And when she asked to stay in contact, I willingly gave her my number, and we sent each other a text to make sure that it worked, and then she got off the bus at her stop. A few minutes later, I realized that I didn't recognize my surroundings and that I had gotten on the wrong bus, but luckily it was still in the same city. So I got off and I biked the rest of the way to work and was only a minute late. I'm usually early. But then things got weird. After work, which was only a 6-hour shift, I find 2 missed calls and 12 messages, mostly asking why I was not answering and why I was ignoring her. I just responded with, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was working and I couldn't look at my phone," before answering her first question, and I just headed home. She then proceeded to text me constantly, almost hourly for the next 2 days. And by the 3rd day, things got weirder when she started calling me by a whole bunch of terms of endearment like sweetheart, babe, and honey. I asked politely for her to stop because it made me uncomfortable. She did for a day, but then she started again with more. And out of nowhere, she asked me not to block her before I had even contemplated it. I really should have, but I was just exhausted and I was not thinking straight from exams and work. Now, being extremely uncomfortable and confused, I went and talked to some family who I knew would give it to me straight and blunt on what I should do about the situation. They were horrified with how much information I had given this lady that was flirting with me, who was 10 years older than me. She knew the names of my family, the city I lived in, one of the buses that I used for transportation daily, my name, my number, and then where I worked. And by the end of that conversation, I was freaking out, but I also was trying to rationalize the situation. I'm a bit of a pushover, and I felt bad about even blocking her, even though I probably should have hours prior. Eventually, my father stepped in and ended up blocking her on my phone for me, so that I wouldn't feel as guilty about it. We then contacted my work, and they kindly transferred me buildings a couple months later. And I thankfully have not heard from her since. This is a story from when I was in 8th grade, or around that time. Honestly, I feel a bit stupid bringing it up here, but I have never told anyone, not family, not friends, and I just want to let it out somewhere. Up until high school, I usually went home with my friend, me walking and her trotting alongside on her bike. The walk home from school was in a relatively safe area. It was surrounded by other schools, supermarkets, churches, and little houses, so I never felt unsafe during that 10-minute walk. Not even on that one particular day when my friend had to ride ahead and I was left walking home alone. About halfway through my usual route, I suddenly had this unsettling feeling, like someone was watching me. I turned my head toward the street next to me, and I saw a car driving noticeably slower than it should have been. I actually looked it up on Google Maps out of curiosity, and the speed limit on that street was 30 kilometers per hour. But this car was moving so slowly that it looked like it was floating, like it was trying to match my pace. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, as I mentioned, there were schools and even a kindergarten in the area. I just assumed that it was a parent looking for a parking spot to pick up their kid. But things started to feel a bit creepy when the driver's window rolled down and the man behind the wheel looked directly at me. My memory of that moment has grown a bit fuzzy over time, but what I remember clearly is a man with short dark hair and an unsettling wide smile. It's that smile that stuck in my memory the most. It didn't fade for a second. The situation was bizarre and I couldn't fully process what was happening. So I just turned my head and I looked straight ahead. But to my shock, he kept staring. That same horrifying twisted smile plastered across his face, and he continued creeping along next to me, not speeding up at all. It felt like an eternity, and I didn't know what to do. Everything about the situation felt so surreal. I looked around to see if maybe he was looking at someone else, or if anyone else noticed how creepy this was. But I remember people just walking by normally, as if nothing strange was happening. My only comfort was that people were around at all, because by that point, I was getting genuinely scared and still struggling to register what was happening. I even thought about calling out to some guy walking in front of me, but I was too shy to say anything. Out of curiosity and fear, I started walking even slower. I could have sworn that I saw a flicker of disappointment on his face before he finally drove away. It all felt like a nightmare. I felt relieved watching the car disappear down the road. But then, as I reached a crossroad that led to the street that I lived on, he appeared again. He was back, driving just as slowly, window down. That same grotesque, unnatural smile stretched across his face. At that point, I was so stunned that I froze for a moment and I looked directly at him. I was trying to convince myself this was really happening and not something that I was making up. Maybe he was someone I knew, a friend from my parents, an old teacher trying to say hello. But no, this was real. This man was practically twisting his entire upper body to look at me through the car window, and I didn't know him. That smile was still unbearably creepy, and I had no idea what he wanted. Even worse, I realized something. From the direction he was now coming from, he must have driven in a circle around the block just to appear again on the street that I was about to enter. The street where I lived, my home, was only a minute away. He was still driving well below 30 kilometers per hour, still saying nothing, still staring. As I stood there, trying to comprehend how real and dangerous this was, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. This creep could be trying to figure out where I lived. The street was lined with houses, but there wasn't a single other person around, just him and me. All I wanted was for this nightmare to end. It was just the way he wasn't saying anything, just looking into my face, that scared the hell out of me. Thankfully, he never stopped the car completely. He just kept creeping along slowly. And eventually, he drove past far enough that I could finally cross the street. And at that point, I couldn't care about anything else. I told myself that if he came near me again, I would scream. I just ran straight home, and even while running, I could swear that he was still twisting his body to keep his eyes on me, still smiling that awful smile as he drove away. I was genuinely terrified, and this incident traumatized me. I knew that I hadn't imagined it. I kept checking, kept thinking about it over and over and over again. I was so scared that he would figure out where I lived that I refused to go to school or leave the house for days. I remained on edge for weeks, always half expecting him to show up again. I've thought about this moment so many times. Did he know me? Then why didn't he say anything? Why did he just smile like that? I even felt ashamed for wearing a skirt that day, thinking maybe it was just some creep lurking around. But no matter what, the whole situation was terrifying. And now I'm an adult, still living with my parents in the same place, though I have no reason to walk that old route anymore. I've never seen that man again, and I have never experienced anything as creepy or strange as that day. All that's been haunting me is his creepy smile, and how I will never quite understand how this horror movie story actually happened to me. I never told my parents or my friends, especially not my mom. She's always been very overprotective, and I knew that if I told her, she'd probably have started walking me to school again like I was a kindergartner. And my friends back then probably wouldn't have believed me anyway. So now that I've finally gotten this off my chest, creepy car guy, I'm glad that I never saw you again, and I hope that it stays that way. I genuinely hope that you never do this or something worse to any other kid, ever. Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone who is truly crazy? Not someone who just does off-the-wall things or acts different, but genuinely insane. I have, and it terrified me. Let me back up. I will be vague on many details for obvious reasons, but a backstory is absolutely necessary. I work for a large corporation, and I have a couple of different bosses, but the one that I formed a genuine friendship with is the one that we will call Jeff. Jeff is a very laid-back, go-with-the-flow type of guy with a great sense of humor. I also should explain that he is single with no children. Not long after I started working with the company, we became friends, and he often stops by my desk to chat. It was about a year ago that he stopped by one morning, and I immediately knew that he was not himself. He seemed distant and stressed, which is unusual for him. When I questioned what was wrong, he told me that he needed to speak with me about a situation. Of course, I was immediately concerned and I urged him to go on. He explained that a few years ago, long before I even started at the company, another woman began working at the company. She was not in our department, but did work within our company that required her to interact with leadership in our area, including Jeff. From this point on, we will call her Lauren. He explained his interactions with Lauren were not often at all, but she was polite and professional when they did need to speak. He said that she worked for the company for less than a year and then left as she announced that she was getting married and moving. And that was that. He did not encounter her again until a couple of weeks prior, when he received a friend request from her on social media. He explained that he didn't think much of it and accepted it, as he was Facebook friends with many colleagues both past and present. She then messaged him later on after accepting the request. He said that he chatted back with her initially as she seemed to just want to catch up. He learned that she had divorced and wanted to move back to our town. The conversation carried on as normal until she asked if he would join her for dinner when she came back to town to visit in a couple of days. And Jeff explained that he politely declined her offer, and at first, she took it well. But then, it all went downhill from there. He stopped responding shortly after declining the dinner invitation, and within a few hours, he received erratic and insulting messages from her. Everything from calling him a wimpy bitch to saying that she was the best thing that he could hope for, and he blew any chance with her now. He did let me read some of these messages myself right then. He honestly felt like these were drunk texts, but still bothered him, and then he blocked her. He figured that was the end of it. But how very wrong he was. She then began emailing both his personal and work email, pleading for another chance, saying that she was drunk and didn't mean it, saying that she needed to see him, and so on. I would get to read a lot of these myself when I would later be asked to print these off for him for evidence. The reason he was telling me about this that particular day was because he had received a message request from Lauren's sister saying that she needed to talk to him about Lauren and that it was urgent. He accepted and responded to who we will call Beth. Beth told him something that had snapped in Lauren when she went through her divorce, and she became fixated on a man that she called Jeff. Beth explained that she had tried to talk some sense into Lauren when everything fizzled out with the initial conversation with Jeff. But Lauren wasn't having it. Lauren told Beth that he was her soulmate and that she was going after him. All of this led to Beth explaining that Lauren had flown into our town and was staying at a hotel close to our company and was coming to see him at work. Jeff said that he had found out what Beth said to be true when he came in and found Lauren standing outside his office. She immediately ran to him when he saw him and then pulled him into an awkward hug. Jeff said that he smelled the alcohol on her and he immediately pulled away. She explained that she was here to get her old job back and needed to see him. She also brought him gifts that included gift cards, snacks, and a picture of herself. Jeff refused these gifts, but she became more forceful and insisted he keep them. Jeff got away from her shortly after saying that he had a meeting. He then went to HR to explain the situation and how he absolutely did not want her to be employed there again. He provided me with a copy of the picture she left for him and said that if I saw her anywhere around the company property, to notify security. Beth later sent Jeff a picture of Lauren dressed as a man that Lauren had sent to her, saying, "I'm wearing a disguise so I can watch him without him knowing it's me." Again, this was nearly a year ago. Things only escalated. Lauren made multiple trips back to our town, but would try to catch Jeff in the parking lot. He would find multiple letters on his vehicle from her. Sometimes they made no sense. She once left him 2 letters that said the exact same things, word for word, but one was in cursive and the other one was in print. Jeff blocked numerous email accounts only for her to make new ones, and she professed her love for him, begging him to want her. She stated that she made him her beneficiary if anything was to happen to her. She even sent emails that were clearly from her, but claimed to be other men that wanted her and needed him to release her so that she could love them instead. Again, I got to read all of this when we were printing for evidence. She eventually got his personal cell phone number somehow and began calling and texting him constantly. He would block the numbers, only for new ones to come through. This eventually ended up in court, and a protective order was granted. This did bring things to a halt for a while. Jeff was finally himself once this occurred, as he had become a shell of himself, and I really felt horrible for him. Well, that was until this week. On Monday morning, Jeff came by my desk and I could tell right away that he was not happy. And before I could say a word, he demanded to know who placed all those letters on his desk. I was confused as I had no clue what he was talking about. I said as much, and he explained that there was a thick stack of letters and handmade Valentine cards on his desk from Lauren. We later found out that they had been stuffed under his door, and the housekeeper found them scattered on his office floor when she went to clean it. She didn't know what they were, so she just picked them up and neatly placed them on his desk. This was as troubling as it was figuring out how she got in the building in the first place. And shortly after, Jeff returned to his office to finish up some things before taking the letters to the police station. I was working away at my desk when I received a call from Jeff. Upon answering, I heard an almost panicked Jeff saying, "She's here!" He explained that he got a knock at his office door and opened it to find her on the other side grinning at him. He said that he told her that he was calling the police and slammed the door in her face and locked it. He called the police and then called me to inform me that she had been there and the police were on the way. I foolishly assumed that she'd bailed after he told him that he was calling the cops. I got up from my desk and headed down the hall to Jeff's office to check on him and wait on the police with him. But I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw her. She was sitting on the floor outside of his office door, humming to herself. And then she slowly turned her head to look at me. I can't explain the knot that formed in my stomach as our eyes locked. She looked a lot like the picture Jeff had previously given me, but her eyes were different. They were dark. There wasn't that lively spark that you often see in people's eyes. It was like they were hollow, void of any normalcy. Her lips slightly twitched up to a smile, and she then slowly turned her head back towards Jeff's door, and she resumed humming. I booked it. I absolutely darted back to my desk, and thankfully, the police arrived shortly after. She didn't put up a fight. She calmly allowed them to arrest her, and then walked away willingly with them, still humming, and they informed us after. She is still in jail for violating the protective order. Jeff and myself are both still very shaken by the experience, and I will never forget that look or her eyes, staring into an abyss of true insanity. I am currently a 21-year-old female, and I have lived alone since I was 18. When I was around 18 or 19, I would often take walks to a park that wasn't too far from my apartment complex. At that time, I had a boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, who was a couple of months older than me, but unfortunately, he was at work when I decided to go out for my walk. I should mention now that there is a bus stop at the left end of my street that wasn't too far from the park. I remember stopping at the end of the block, waiting for cars to let me pass. Then I, for some reason, looked over at the bus stop, and I saw a man staring me down. After noticing this, I really didn't care if the cars would let me pass or not, so I just walked into the road. I did almost get hit, but I just wanted to be far away from that guy. There was a high school that was probably 5 to 10 minutes away from the park, and I remember looking back at the school because it was a school that I was currently attending at that time. But then, I saw that man who was staring me down from the bus stop. He was following me. I started slightly panicking. I think I even texted my boyfriend about how I'm pretty sure that I was being followed. I kept looking back behind me and made sure that there was a good sizable distance between him and I. I knew that if I have slowed my pace down, something bad was going to happen. I eventually got to the park and I started getting really anxious. My reasons being, number one, the park entrance was down a hill and then split into two separate paths that you couldn't see into due to trees simply being in the way. Two, knowing that nobody would have been able to see what could have happened to me if I chose to go down one of the two paths. And three, I was off from work and school that day and it was 2 p.m., which typically meant that nobody was in the park around that time. As I started walking down the winded hill, I saw a woman with 2 kids and a dog. I remember the instant relief, and furthermore, the safety that I felt when seeing her. I even picked up my pace to get to her quicker because I was scared out of my mind. I still remember the exact conversation that I had with her to this day. "Hi, I know this may seem weird, but I live down the hill, and while I was crossing the intersection where the bus stop was at, I noticed him staring at me. He then started following me. Can you just act like you know me if this man comes down here?" And before she could even reply, I tilted my head up to the man. He was about to come down the hill. When I did that, I think he slightly panicked and then started walking away. She saw the seriousness of the situation and gathered her kids up into the stroller. I don't know what made him decide to do this next, but as she was trying to get things packed up, he at some point turned back around and was now coming down the hill. I told her that he was coming down, and the woman moved quicker than ever to get things packed up, and I even started helping. As he walked up to us, he immediately started trying to ask me questions. I can't remember what all he said, but I remember the woman was pretty much answering for me. I guess he tried to ask if we knew each other, which of course she lied by telling him that she did know me, and I was coming down to walk back with her. I do know, I backed her up with this claim, and I just wanted the guy to leave me, and now her alone too. He asked us a couple more questions, and eventually we excused ourselves and started our way back up the hill. I remember the woman I had met walked me all the way down to the intersection where the bus stop was across from, and she was clearly very scared for me due to the fact that the guy had eventually started following me and her back. I felt so bad for dragging her into that situation. I didn't know if he would try to follow me all the way back home if we broke off there, or if he would decide to aim new focus onto the woman who was just simply at the park playing with a kid she was babysitting. Before he could get close to us, I walked over to some construction workers whom were now working on the high school sign, and I explained the whole situation to them. I told them about we thought it was weird how the man who was initially just following me was now following me and the lady. I pleaded them to call the cops if he went past the bus stop or started following the lady. The construction workers happily agreed. Then the woman and I went on our own ways. I don't know what happened to that man. I don't know if he was arrested or not. However, an hour later, my ex-boyfriend had gotten home from work. We then went out to go run errands, and as we were driving up the hill, there were 4 police cars parked around the intersection where I told the construction workers to call the police if the man was still trying to follow me. I'm just glad the police were called, especially with the high school being so close. I couldn't forgive myself if he had tried to follow some poor high school kid that was just walking home. So, to the man who was wearing a red and blue puffer jacket, who decided to follow me to a place that I would go to that I consider peaceful, content, and safe, thank you for teaching me to be more aware of people. But let's not meet ever again. In 2023, I was in Marmaris with my best friend, and on our first night in Turkey, around 11 p.m., we ended up at the fun fair by the beach. At first, it felt exciting and harmless due to the fact that we just turned 18 and left college. We were just two girls on a holiday. But something happened that still sits in my chest to this day, and I do not know if I was overreacting or if we narrowly avoided something serious. While we were on one of the rides, I noticed the man staring at us. He was standing nearby the ride just watching us specifically, only us, with this intense focus. During the ride, my sunglasses fell off my head, and when it ended, the same man came up and gave them back to me. I thanked him and then walked off with my friend. We moved on to the next ride, and he followed and got on the same ride, and he sat directly in front of us and kept making eye contact with me the entire time. I started to feel genuinely nervous, and I could tell that my friend did too. When that ride finished, the man came off, but he stood at the queue of the ride watching us. Me and my friend decided to stay on the ride because now we were genuinely getting scared. We had one token left, so we decided to use it while we figured out what to do. During the whole ride me and my friend was on, the man kept staring at us, waiting literally at the entrance of the ride. And when the ride ended, I decided to pull out my phone and take a picture of him, just for safety reasons. When we left the ride, he kept following us around the fun fair, and it gave me a terrible gut feeling. And then I looked at my friend and I told her that when I count down to 3, to take off our shoes and then run as fast as we can. He literally chased us through the streets, and we ran for about 10 minutes. Eventually, we ran into a restaurant and hid inside. He must not have seen us go in because he kept running straight past. We stayed hidden until we were sure that he was gone. What scares me even more is that he had a young boy, maybe 14 to 15 years old, with him the entire time that this happened. The boy was not walking ahead or playing. He stayed near the man, trailing behind him. Later that week, near our hotel, we saw him again. This time, he was on the beach watching a British woman sitting by herself. My friend and I rushed over to warn her. She was grateful, but I could not shake the feeling that if we had not acted when we did, something terrible could have happened to us. What could he have possibly wanted? Has anything like this happened to anyone else in Marmaris or Turkey in general? What does this sound like to you? This happened last year, and to this day, I still can't figure out what he wanted. I work at a small bookstore in a quiet part of town. It closes at 9 p.m., and since I usually work closing shifts, I walk to my car in the empty parking lot alone. It's a really safe area, or so I thought. About a week into my new shift schedule, I started noticing a man across the street. He wasn't doing anything at first, just leaning on a lamppost looking toward the store. The first night, I brushed it off. The second night, he was there again, same place, same posture. And by the third night, I knew that it wasn't a coincidence. He never approached, never said anything, just watched. I told my manager, but he said unless the guy came onto store property, there wasn't much to do. So I started leaving through the back door instead. For a few days it worked and he was gone. Until he wasn't. One night, I walked to my car and I found a sticky note on the windshield, and all it said was, "Why are you hiding?" There was no name, no number, just that one sentence. I decided that night that I wasn't going to run anymore. The next evening, I left work and saw him again across the street. So, I followed him. I didn't confront him. I just walked the same direction from a distance. He didn't look back once. He walked 3 blocks, turned into an alley near an old building, and then vanished. I'm serious. He just disappeared, and I ran to the corner. Nothing. No doors, no noise, no shadow. He was just gone. And I never saw him again. But sometimes, when I leave work late, I still feel like I'm being watched, and I never park in the same place twice. I recently went to a friend's wedding where I encountered something really unsettling. I've known the groom, Tom, since college, and when he invited me to his wedding, I was genuinely happy for him. The ceremony was beautiful, and the reception was lively and fun. As the night went on, I found myself chatting with various guests, including a male cousin of the bride. Let's call him Derek for the story. And while he seemed nice enough at first, there was something about him that felt off. We talked for a bit, but I wasn't interested in him, so I tried to politely excuse myself and mingle with other people that I know. As the night progressed and the wedding began to wind down, the traditional bouquet toss was announced. I wasn't thinking of participating, but as the bouquet flew through the air, it was flying straight toward my face, and out of reflex, I caught it and the crowd cheered. I just laughed it off, even though I wasn't in a relationship or thinking about marriage anytime soon. After the wedding, I said my goodbyes and then headed to my car ready to go home. As I drove away, I noticed a car from the wedding that seemed to be going in the same direction as me. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming that they lived nearby. But as soon as I turned onto my street, the car followed. Something just felt off about it, and my instincts kicked in. I decided not to pull into my driveway, and instead, I drove to a well-lit coffee shop nearby and parked there. I didn't want this creep to know where my house was. The car pulled up behind me, and a sense of dread settled in when I saw Derek get out and then approach my vehicle. He knocked on my window, and I reluctantly rolled it down just a crack to see what he wanted. Derek tried to ask for my number, insisting that since I caught the bouquet, it was a sign that I needed to get married soon and that he was interested in me. And the first thing that really came out of my mouth was, "What the fuck?" The whole situation was so bizarre and incredibly uncomfortable. I told him that I was not interested at all and that getting the bouquet didn't mean shit. But he did not take no for an answer and insisted that I give him my number and that we can just start with a simple coffee date. I understood that this situation is just going to be a back and forth of me saying no and him not respecting it. So I decided that I wasn't going to entertain this any further. I rolled my windows up and I honked, which made him back away, and I sped off, making the light before Derek even had a chance to get back into his car. I drove home with my heart pounding. I parked in my garage, feeling a wave of relief as the door closed behind me. Now, I am seriously considering telling the bride about her cousin's creepy behavior. It's not something I want to deal with alone, and I feel that she should know. I just have this gut feeling that he's not going to stop here. But I'm a bit concerned on how she would react about it. Update. I decided to reach out to the bride and I told her about what happened with Derek. She was super apologetic and thanked me for letting her know. She mentioned that Derek is a bit of a weirdo and they only invited him because his family. She assured me that she would have a word with him and make sure that he doesn't bother me again. It's a bit comforting to know that she's on my side, and I'm hoping that this will be the end of it. If there are any more updates, I'll be back to let you guys know. My name is Tracy, and I'm 24 years old, and I live in the bustling city of Seattle, Washington. I have always loved the vibrant energy of the city, with its coffee culture and the ever-present drizzle that somehow adds to its charm. My story begins in the place that I find solace in, Starbucks. It was a typical rainy afternoon. I decided to treat myself to a caramel macchiato at the Starbucks on Pike Street. Since I wasn't in a hurry, I grabbed my coffee and I found a cozy seat by the window, just enjoying the ambience and watching people bustle by. As I sipped my coffee, a guy approached me. He looked to be in his late 20s with dark hair, a set of piercing blue eyes, and a chiseled jawline. He wore a well-fitted leather jacket and smelled of subtle masculine cologne. He asked if he could join me, and I couldn't help but be drawn to his charming smile and confident demeanor. Being single and, ready to mingle, I was open to new experiences, so I said yes. His name was Alex, and we immediately hit it off. He was witty, kind, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We exchanged numbers before parting ways. We started texting, and later on, Alex and I started going on dates, and each one felt like a dream. We had picnics at Gasworks Park, enjoying romantic dinners at quaint little restaurants, and we took long walks along the waterfront. He was always attentive, holding open doors for me and making sure that I was comfortable. He had a way of making me feel special, and I soon found myself falling for him. Our dates were filled with laughter and deep conversations. He seemed perfect, the kind of guy that I have always dreamed of. And after a few months, we decided to make things official. Alex became my boyfriend, and for the first 3 months, he was everything that I could ever want. He was sweet, caring, and always made time for me. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. But after 3 months, things started to change with Alex. He became cold and distant. When we went on dates, he would often ignore me and he's just glued to his phone. Conversations that once flowed so easily became strained and awkward. I tried to brush it off thinking that he might just be stressed with work, but his behavior persisted and it was really hurting me. At the same time, he also became controlling. Ironic, right? Whenever I went out with friends, he would bombard me with calls and texts, accusing me of cheating or lying about my whereabouts. The sweet, attentive guy that I fell for seemed to disappear, replaced by someone that I barely recognize. Yet, after these episodes, he would suddenly shower me with affection, apologizing profusely, giving me flowers, gifts, and then promising to change. But then, after everything is alright, he then goes back to being cold and distant, and then the cycle begins again. I just couldn't get it, like if I was with him, I would get ignored, but when I wasn't with him, he would turn into this controlling, clingy monster. Well, I reached my breaking point and I decided to end the relationship. Alex couldn't understand what he did wrong though. He became angry during the breakup He was screaming and he was throwing things around my apartment. I had never seen him so enraged. He broke the picture frame and knocked over a lamp. Like, what the hell? This was a side to him that I was never expecting at all. A good thing that he was showing it this early, though. But at that moment, I was extremely terrified, so I called the police. The police then arrived and managed to calm him down, and then they escorted him out of my apartment. Things were silent for a week, and I hoped that that was the end of it. All that I had to do right now was to move on and let go of him. But guess what? I was wrong. Alex showed up at my door with flowers, asking me to take him back. I explained that it was over and that I couldn't continue in a relationship that made me feel unsafe. He threw the flowers on the ground and just stormed out, and I thought that that would be the last that I would see of him. And you know what? I was wrong again. Alex began stalking me. He called and texted me constantly, begging for another chance, and then turning angry when I didn't respond. I started seeing his car parked near my apartment, and he would follow me to work and other places I frequented. I was hanging out with friends once, and we saw him sitting and drinking at another table all by himself, just staring at me. This guy that I once fell in love with was seriously freaking me out. One night, I was walking home from the grocery store when I noticed him trailing behind me. My heart pounded with fear as I quickened my pace. I was so desperate to get home and just to get away from him. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I was constantly looking over my shoulder and feeling unsafe in my own city. The situation reached its climax though one night when I was asleep. I woke up to the sound of banging on my door. I checked the time, and it was 2 a.m. It was Alex outside. He was shouting and he was demanding to be let in. He said that he just wanted to talk, but I was terrified. So I grabbed my phone ready to call the police when I saw red and blue lights flashing through the window. The police arrived, and it turned out that my neighbors had called them after hearing the disturbance. They took Alex away and I filed a police report. The ordeal left me shaken, but I was grateful for my neighbors and the swift response of the police. In the aftermath, I had to file a restraining order against him. I also took more steps to protect myself. I changed my phone number, I installed security cameras, and I took self-defense classes. If I had ignored the red flags in my relationship, things could have ended much, much worse. So, yeah, that's my story. My encounter with a charming stranger turned stalker taught me a valuable lesson about trust, safety, and resilience. I hope my experience serves as a cautionary tale and offers some comfort to others who might be going through similar situations. Please stay safe and always trust your instincts. Alright guys, let me know if this was as scary as I'm making it out to be in my mind. This afternoon, my friend was home alone and we were calling, and a guy knocked on her door. She looked out the window and it was a little blue van. Thinking that it was an Amazon worker, she opened the door and it was apparently a young man that did roof measurements. He asked if her parents are home and she said no. He asked what time she thought they would be back and she said around 6. He then started asking questions like, "Oh, what kind of dog you have?" Because her dog was barking in the background. She told him that she didn't really know his breed and that he was some weird mutt. He then complimented her eyes and her outfit and asked, "Are your parents at work or something?" And she replied yes. My friend is a really attractive girl with big pretty eyes and a small petite body. which made it even more scary because you could tell that he was flirting. 10 minutes later, her dog starts barking again, and I was already telling her how weird it was that he was asking so many questions and how stupid it was that she just revealed that her parents wouldn't be home for a good amount of time. She looks out her window and there's no car outside, but her dog was still barking, but she was like, it's probably barking at a deer. And then there was a known rhythmic knocking on her door. I told her to absolutely not answer the door because it was probably that guy again. She wasn't really taking it that seriously, but it worried me so bad. She then saw the same guy walk away down her driveway, which was weird that he parked all the way down there where you couldn't see his car. Originally, he had pulled almost all the way in. After this, she left and drove to my house. But am I crazy? Maybe I just watched way too many true crime stories, but I thought that was so scary. He was young, and she said that he was attractive, so it was possible that he just came back around to ask for her number, and the questions were him attempting to converse. But who does that while on a job? Especially at someone's doorstep. Do you guys think that I'm just overreacting? I had always considered myself a pretty ordinary person, living a quiet life in a small town with my boyfriend Jason. We'd been together a couple of years and everything was going smoothly. That was until this strange encounter turned my world upside down. About a month ago, Jason came home from work looking a bit rattled. This wasn't like him. He's usually the calm and collected type. I asked him what was up, and after some hesitation, he told me about a man who had come into his workplace that day. The man had asked to speak with him directly, which wasn't entirely out of the ordinary, as my boyfriend managed customer service at a local hardware store. But the conversation that followed was anything but normal. The man, whom Jason described as scruffy and intense with an unsettling demeanor, asked, "Are you Jason?" When he confirmed, the man said something that sent chills down my spine. I just wanted to meet the guy who's with the girl that I proposed to." Jason, thinking that it must be a mistake, asked who he was talking about. And then the man gave my full name. I was floored. Jason, trying to keep things polite, asked for the guy's name so he could tell me who stopped by. Instead, the man just stared at him with a death glare before turning and walking away without another word. As my partner recounted this to me, I could tell that it left him shaken. He's not easily intimidated, but something about the encounter had disturbed him deeply. My immediate reaction was confusion. As far as I knew, there was no one who could have possibly fit that description in my life. I've only had one person ever propose to me, and Jason had met him before. It was just a brief high school romance that ended amicably, and I didn't recognize the man from his description. Over the next few days, I racked my brain trying to think of anyone who remotely fits the scenario. I thought through friends of friends, old classmates, even acquaintances from social gatherings. But nothing and no one really clicked to me. Jason assured me none of these people matched the man he saw. Just as I was starting to chalk it up to someone with a bizarre mix-up, I noticed something unsettling. My dad's bag was missing from my car. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, but the thing is, I only ever leave my car unlocked at home. It's an unspoken rule in our quiet neighborhood, Everyone knows everyone, and thefts are rare. Besides, my car had much more valuable items than a bag of worn out shoes and leotards. Why would someone steal that? I tried to reason with myself, maybe I'd accidentally left the car unlocked somewhere else. But it didn't add up, and a knot of unease began to twist in my stomach. Was it possible that the man from Jason's work had something to do with this? As days turned into weeks, my anxiety grew, and I started noticing small strange occurrences around our house. Objects slightly out of place, the feeling of being watched, odd sounds at night. And I mentioned it to Jason, who agreed that we should be more vigilant. We started double checking locks and keeping a lookout for any unusual activity. One evening, as we were getting ready to head out for a dinner date, I glimpsed a shadowy figure standing just beyond the circle of light cast by our porch lamp. My heart skipped a beat. I nudged Jason, who instantly turned to see, but by the time that he looked, the figure was gone. I tried to shake it off as paranoia, but deep down, I couldn't dismiss the possibility that it was the same man lurking. But time passed, and with no further incidents, I convinced myself to move on. Until one night, when I was home alone since my boyfriend had to work late, I had settled into the couch with a movie and also a glass of wine. Halfway through, the power suddenly flickered and then went out, plunging the house into darkness. I froze, my mind racing through all the horror movie scenarios that I have ever seen. And gathering my courage, I reached for my phone to use the flashlight and then checked the circuit breaker. As I moved through the hallway, I heard a soft, deliberate tapping at the window, the kind of sound that makes your skin crawl. Peering through the curtains, my heart pounded as I saw the same shadowy figure standing in the yard, looking directly at me. Panic surged through me, and I called Jason immediately, my voice shaking as I explained what was happening. He promised to drive back as fast as he could, and then told me to hang up and call the police. It felt like an eternity before I saw the familiar flash of the police lights. Jason also arrived shortly after, and together they scanned the yard. But the figure was gone, leaving only footprints in the soft soil. The police took a report and promised to patrol the area more frequently, but I could see in their eyes that they thought that it might just be nerves or an overactive imagination. But seriously? Imagination my ass, there were footprints. I wish I could say that that was the end and that the presence of the police scared them off, but it wasn't. Though we never saw the shadowy figure again, I continued to receive mysterious unsigned notes on my doorstep. They were filled with cryptic messages about knowing me and wanting to talk, sometimes even referring to the proposal that never happened. The notes were chilling, as if it was written by someone who knew my life intimately. I tried to contact the police again, but they said that the notes were not enough as proof or help to find whoever was doing this. It was just so unbearable that I finally ended up begging my boyfriend to move places. And we did find a new place in a different part of town, hoping that distance would finally sever whatever connection the stranger thought he had with me. And since moving, the incidents have stopped and life has returned to a semblance of normalcy. I'm not sure what happened, if they lost interest, if they couldn't find me, if it was a neighbor or something. I'm just glad that it stopped. So to the stranger who disrupted my peace and left me questioning my safety, let's never meet again. Hi. I wanted to share this creepy experience that I had in university. For context, I'm a female. For a while, everything seemed fine at school. My classes were going well, and I was enjoying time with friends. But then, out of nowhere, strange things started happening. It began with small unsettling incidents. My things moved around and were at places that I'm sure I didn't leave them on. I thought that it was just my exhaustion or stress because of the exams coming up soon. But then some things went missing entirely. Not just random stuff at home that I could brush off, but things that were very personal to me, like my journal and some underwear. I know, it's a bit embarrassing. I also had this persistent feeling of being watched that I couldn't quite explain. It was unnerving, something like a shadow in the corner of my eye that vanished when I tried to focus on it. I really didn't know who to turn to. I didn't want to worry my parents, so I decided to confide in my longtime friend, Josh. We had known each other for years, and he had always been someone that I could rely on. A best friend, you can call him that. When I told him about the stalking and the weird experiences I was having, he was very sympathetic, and he suggested practical things to help me feel safer. He advised me to change the code on my locker and become more cautious about my routine, and for a while it felt reassuring to have his support. But despite these measures, the stalking and strange occurrences continued. Whoever it was seemed to know things no one else should, like the new combination to my locker. I couldn't figure out how they were doing it. Only Josh knew about the new combo. He was there when I changed it, and I trusted him completely. But as the incidents persisted, doubt began to creep in my mind. I had a theory, and I wanted to test it. I changed my lock combination without telling Josh, and after that, nothing in my locker was ever disturbed again. I stopped leaving a spare key under my mat and then changed the locks on my bedroom door, and nothing in my house, specifically my room, was disturbed again. Just to note, as I mentioned, Josh has been a friend for years, and he knew about the key under the mat since he visits my house from time to time, and there has been multiple instances when I was too lazy to open the door and I just told him to use the key under the mat. I felt a mix of relief and dread as the evidence pointed in a troubling direction. I began making other changes too, small things like varying my schedule and keeping details to myself. And each time, the stalkers seemed to be out of the loop, confirming what I was beginning to fear. My heart sank as I realized that Josh, my trusted friend, could be behind all of this. It was a difficult realization, but I knew that I had to distance myself. I started avoiding him, ignoring his texts and his calls, and I didn't respond when he asked to meet up. I blocked his number after he repeatedly tried reaching out. One day, as I was heading home, I noticed him waiting outside my house. Panic gripped me, and I quickly went inside, locking the door behind me. My dad was home early, and he noticed Josh loitering outside. He then went out to confront him, firmly telling him to leave. Josh eventually walked away after some stern words from my dad. And later that night, I sat down with my dad and mom and shared everything that I had pieced together about the stalking. My dad was furious, and he wanted to confront Josh himself, but my mom and I managed to calm him down, and instead, he decided to call Josh's parents, explaining the situation and demanding that they tell Josh to stay away from me. After that call, the stalking incidents became less frequent. It was as if the message had finally gotten through. Over the next few months, everything stopped completely. I never spoke to Josh again, and part of me is sad about the loss of our friendship. But I also felt a profound sense of relief knowing that that chapter of my life is over. I just saw another post on this sub, and it made me think about this weird dude that I met last year. So I decided that I want to do a little story time because I totally forgot this happened to me a bit ago. I'm 20 now, and this happened in like October or November, so not even a year ago. I was homeless and I was couch hopping with friends or sleeping in my friends' cars, and I was drinking a lot and etc. One of my friends had met this dude in the same neighborhood who they did deals with. This neighborhood is known for old crackheads basically. So he was a bit younger, but looked like he definitely dabbled in some hard drugs. He had a sunken face and eyes with scabs on his face too. He was generous and welcoming though. He was obsessed with his cat, so I thought he was an innocent guy. Her BF, and I think one or two more people and I go and chill to drink at his house. He was a cool dude, a little weird, but he was alright, and I can get along with weird people. After a few hours roll by and everyone's ready to go home, my friend asked me where I needed to go for the night. I, of course, didn't have a plan. I never did. And that guy then offered to let me stay there after hearing my situation. I said yes very hesitantly because for some reason, my skin kind of crawled when he offered. I don't know if it was intuition or what, and my friend then insisted and said that I should stay there if I have nowhere else. I then agreed, and then everyone left. He then yapped my ear off about spiritual things that didn't make sense. He then said that he was going to bed and offered for me to sleep in his room. I walked into his room to check it out, and he had a day bed that pulls out another bed at the bottom. So I was like, okay, I don't have to sleep with him, so this could work. Also, I forgot to mention, this is a trailer home that was not very well kept up with. The dishes were nasty and piling up, and they were attracting all sorts of bugs. The counters were covered in resin, tobacco, soda, just looked like it's never been cleaned before. The living room was clean, but that was it. He then started clearing some clothes off the upper part of the bed so he can lay down, and then stopped and was like, never mind. We can both just sleep on the bottom one. I then looked at him and said, you know what? I think I'll just sleep on the couch. It's okay. He then insisted that it was okay and that he wasn't gonna be weird. And he was acting like a kid begging me to buy him a toy. I insisted on sleeping on the couch, and then he got upset and then laid in his bed. But then like 30 minutes later, he says from the other room something like, you know what? This is weird. Maybe you should just stay here. He then proceeds to say that he needs to be alone, and I'm like, dude, at this point, it's 3 a.m. You're whining because I won't sleep in the bed with you. I don't know you. And then, he kept insisting on me sleeping in the room with him. I keep declining and I say that I'm going to sleep. He says fine, but that he's kicking me out in the morning, and that was totally okay with me. Morning comes around and he wakes up making pancakes. I then ask if he can drop me off at work since I'm working in the morning. He said yes and acted like nothing happened the night before, and then started yapping my ear off again about spiritual bullshit. It was time for me to go to work, so I finally leave this man's house and he drops me off at work. I work all day, and while I was still at work, during night, he somehow got my number from someone and then texted me. He said something like, "Hey, I got a case of beer and some weed if you want to come over." I told him that I had other plans, and then he texted me that I said that I told him that I would hang out with him later. Well, I never said that, so I just ignored him. He then texted me a couple more times with a question mark or a hello, and I ignored all of them. Fast forward, I think a week or two later, this man then comes into my job and asks someone for a job interview. I recognized him, and I was very scared because I did not want him working with me at all. He gets an interview from my manager somehow, and then he leaves. My coworker came up to me and was like, "Hey, have you seen that weird dude that just came in?" I mentioned that I somewhat knew him and that he is in fact very weird. He then brought up that maybe he was trying to stalk me. This was a joke at first and we laughed about it, but then he continued his work, but he did warn the managers about what I told him just in case, and the manager emailed him immediately saying that he wasn't hired, and I was very relieved. But then, I shit you not even an hour later, this guy comes back to my job with a different outfit and then asks for an interview. This time he was looking around the place all sketchy, and I then ran into the bathroom because now I think this man is stalking me for real. Thankfully, the first person that saw him was my coworker who I was just talking to, and thank God, he seems to be a smart, protective man because he then tells the creepy guy that he just came in an hour ago and already got an interview and didn't get hired, and that he needed to get the hell out. He did leave, but not without a bit of arguing. After I got out of the bathroom, my coworker gave me the rundown on what happened and said that the guy was definitely bad news and told me to never go near that guy again, and I haven't. I don't know what could have transpired from that, but it probably wasn't anything good. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.